Little more than a year after the publication of the Encyclical Laudato Si, it is a real pleasure to meet with so many experts in order to reflect together upon the significance of the Paris Agreement, whose adoption on December the 12th last is considered a historic moment by many and which constitutes a particular responsibility for the entire international community. The Paris Conference, COP21, showed that humanity has the capacity to come together to protect our common home and has the will and intelligence to direct both our human technology and power in the service of another kind of progress, one that is healthier, more humane, more social and more integrated. COP21 represented a profound realization that collective action is more effective than individual efforts. We are but a few weeks away from the next important step in the process initiated at Paris, COP22, which takes place in Marrakesh this November. It comes at a moment of hope and encouragement. Just last week, during the September 21st high-level event on entry into force of the Paris Agreement on climate change, an additional 31 countries deposited their instruments of adhesion to the agreement. Thus, 60 states have already adhered, representing 47.76% of global greenhouse emissions, which brings us nearer the level of 55% needed for entry into force. We're all aware, and we have now entered the technical phase for entering the Paris Agreement operative, for rendering the Paris Agreement operative, with the aim of developing the rules and mechanisms for its correct and effective application, especially at the national level. It is a delicate moment as we prepare the concrete elements necessary for the entry into force of the agreement. These elements are indeed complex, but they should not be considered as merely technical questions, since they must have the continued political support and encouragement that were so vital in securing the final result of COP21. In this perspective, how timely and significant is the Holy Father's call to strengthen the conviction that we are one single human family. There are no frontiers or barriers, political or social, behind which we can hide. Still less is there room for the globalization of indifference. Charting the future is the great cultural and educational challenge before us. It is a challenge that invites the contribution and commitment of every member of the human family. In his remarks following the Angelus on the day after the adoption of the Paris Agreement, Pope Francis noted that its implementation will require concerted commitment and generous dedication by each one, with the hope that it may guarantee special attention to the most vulnerable populations. I urge the entire international community to continue with solicitude the path taken in a sign of solidarity that it will become more and more active. On its part, the Holy See is committed to continuing to guide and follow the process of implementation of the Paris Agreement. The novelty of this agreement lies in the fact that it has sent out a strong political signal by enshrining the commitment to accelerate the transition towards a model of economic development based on low or zero carbon consumption, encouraging, in the words of Pope Francis, solidarity towards the most vulnerable populations and playing on the strong links between the fight against climate change and that against poverty. It is an important signal addressed to the investment, innovation, and technical development sectors. How strong that signal will remain depends on the continuing commitment of the parties, once the spotlight is off the issue, to participate in and strengthen the process of implementation of the agreement. It is worth remembering that the commitment and the will of the parties will depend to a large extent on the ability of the economic systems in each country to absorb the measures demanded by the Paris Agreement and to assume a proactive form of behavior capable of embracing the implementation, not as a burden to be assumed, but as an opportunity for innovation, for entrepreneurship, and for employment by adopting a strategy of development for the creation of new infrastructure, technology, and industries that will allow the economy to go beyond business as usual. In addition, that implementation process may demand a recalibration of foreign policy and international cooperation, guided by an awareness of our shared environmental fate and all the consequences for national and international economic development policy. Clearly, the process may not be reduced merely to its technical and economic dimensions. Technical solutions are necessary but not sufficient. Even if many things have to change course, above all, it is humanity that needs to change. As Pope Francis and the Holy See have often observed, it is essential to pay close attention to the ethical and social dimensions of the new paradigm for development and progress. This involves fundamental questions about the models of production and consumption, and above all, about education and the promotion of lifestyles marked by an integral ecology as well outlined in Laudato Si. It involves cultivating a responsible awareness that in order to confront effectively the deterioration of the environment, it is indispensable that the fight against poverty and against social and ethical decay remains a primary objective. It is possible to perceive in these international processes an attempt to appreciate the relation between humanity and the environment based upon a growing awareness of a shared responsibility towards our common home, to which Laudato Si frequently alludes. It is this consciousness of our shared responsibility that must spur each of us to promote seriously a culture of care that should permeate the whole society. Our current lifestyle, with its throwaway culture, is unsustainable and must not have a place in our models of development and of education for an integral ecology. All of this should be kept in mind when implementing the Paris Agreement. In this task, all are called to play a part, the state parties and also non-party stakeholders, who according to the Paris Agreement include civil society, the private sector, financial institutions, cities, other subnational authorities, local communities, indigenous peoples. It will be important in this regard that the various stakeholders succeed in working according to that multidimensional outlook of integral ecology which connects the various sectors, technical, economic, social, environmental, and ethical. They must be aware that we do not face multiple crises, but a single and complex social environmental crisis, and that there is, in fact, no room for the globalization of indifference, for an economy of exclusion, for a throwaway culture of which Pope Francis so often warns us. Thank you very much.